Here, come on.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much for joining us this evening to discuss the Dowd Park project. This project will develop the small wooded lot next to the historic Dowd House in Camp Green into a small park for the neighborhood to enjoy. Tonight, we're going to present a little history about the project to date and kind of how we got here. We're also going to walk through the specifics of the park element, the plan, and we'll end with some additional information about the project, and we'll follow up with some questions and comments from everybody here who has something they'd like to share. So my name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Park and Recreation. With me tonight are Katie Lloyd, Senior Planner, and Katie Daughtry, Planner, also with Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Capital Planning. And we're joined tonight by our design consultant team, Lisa Carey and Matt Langston, with Landworks Design Group from here in Charlotte. So thank you all for muting yourselves. We will have an opportunity after the presentation for some questions and comments. If you have trouble muting or you unmute, you can go down to the button down here. The microphone with the red slash in it means that you are muted. We appreciate that. The camera down in the bottom left, sometimes it is in a pull down menu. Feel free to open up your camera if you'd like to. But if it has a red slash in it, then your camera is off. Throughout the presentation tonight, if you'd like, you can write some questions and comments in the chat feature. So down at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a little chat window, a little pop-up box or dialog box there. So if you click that, it will engage the chat window. So as we get moving, let's try that out. So in that window, please type in your name, your zip code, and your favorite park, greenway, or nature preserve here in Mecklenburg County. And we'll let some of those items roll through as I turn it over to Katie Daughtry with Park and Recreation to get us started.
Thank you, Bert. I look forward to seeing what everybody's choices are and what their favorite places are. We have a lot of unique facilities across the county, so I hope that you all have had the opportunity to get out and enjoy some of those. So for a little history on where we've been so far, kind of how we got here. As many of you know, the historic Dowd House and fire station are currently owned by the county, but they are in the process of being sold to a developer for use as offices. Proceeds from that sale are what are being used to fund the park. The properties are expected to close in January. And if all goes well, we will be able to start construction on this project shortly after that. And the developer will be starting construction on renovation of the firehouse or the fire station and the Dowd House. And we'll have hopefully all of that wrapped up in August. And like I said, our construction project will start in the spring. We held public meetings to kind of gauge what the community's feelings were on this project and on the park specifically in 2018 and 2019. And in that process, we discovered that the community was very interested in having a playground and event lawn. Those were kind of the top two items that were mentioned. And then the other really popular items were a community garden, a memorial, and fitness equipment. Next slide, please, Bert. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who is our consultant on this project. She's going to go over kind of the existing conditions on the property and then what all and what we're proposing so far.
Go ahead.
The piece of property is a really nice wooded site, bound by Remont Road, Greenland Avenue, and then Monument on the far end. The trees, there are lots of oak, gum, and large pine trees throughout the site. And it has some gentle slope to it. And it's has the old firehouse behind it and the Dowd house and sidewalk. It already has existing sidewalk surrounding it, which we will keep. You can go on to the next slide, please. So when we started looking at the park piece, one thing we took into consideration, there are some there's a good deal of slope by the sidewalk along Greenland Avenue. So in order to create a trail system and a walk through the park, we kind of created a meandering walk further back from the sidewalk to allow the slope along Greenland Avenue. And then along the path, you'll find there are several spaces that have benches to stop and sit. At the far end, the park, we created two entries, one down at the Remont Road end, which would have stamped paving and some new signage. Could be neighborhood signage or historical signage. And then over on Monument Street, there is another, we took that entry kind of down to the center of the block and created a space, kind of a little gathering space there as you come into the park. And down at that end, there's a big open event lawn for gatherings. And then further past that down the path, there's we're proposing a shelter with some tables. And then there's a playground element with a playscape further down. We've kept a lot of the existing trees along by the old fire station along the back in there. And there are also a lot of we've kept large existing trees throughout the site. There are a lot of big oaks and gums, as well as then we have added some trees along new street trees along Greenland Avenue. And then various ground cover and shrub plantings throughout the site, and kind of under the trees at the entry points at the corners, which is kind of hard to see in the plan because they're under the trees.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your description of everything. I think that was very detailed. So, a couple of great examples of what Dowd Park might feel like are Eagles Landing and Reed Park, which are also located in West Charlotte. Both have small shelters and other amenities such as play equipment, a community garden, and public art. And I think if you were to have the opportunity to go visit some of these, you could get a real sense for what this park might feel like. Although every park is unique, it certainly would kind of evoke that same feeling. Next slide, please. On the website, we presented 3 different options for playground equipment. The public was able to provide staff with feedback on which option was most preferred. Option 1, which is what is shown on this slide, which is, would probably be considered a more traditional style of playground equipment, received the most votes. Next slide, please. Option 2, which staff felt kind of honored the training camp history of the area, received the fewest votes. And then next slide, please. Option 3, which is also a more traditional style, received the second most votes. The final decision on the playground equipment will be made once the project is bid and we know exactly how much money we have to spend on the equipment. And while the final product may not include all of the items that we've shown, we'll certainly use the community input to guide our decision. So now if we go to the next slide, we can go over a few of the questions and comments that were submitted through the website, because we certainly want to make sure that all of those were answered. And then after we go through these, we'll open it up to the folks here at the meeting to ask anything that they may need to regarding the project. So the first question we received was, will a dog waste station be included? And absolutely. So we're all, that's kind of part of an overall package that includes benches and signs and trash cans. So we'll certainly be including those, and those will be managed by our operations and maintenance staff. The second question we received was, can the park be named after Neil Broom? I know that, I believe that came from Miss Cynthia. and of course, I think we've already sent her the information to start that process if that's something that everybody's interested in doing. If anybody else has any other, questions around that, you can contact me directly and I can provide you with the information that you need. We also were asked if there would be any swings, and we absolutely think we can provide swings, probably somewhere near that playground equipment. So that's something as we get kind of closer to our bid that we will look to incorporate. And then lastly, we were asked about outdoor exercise equipment for adults. So once we kind of get a good handle on our budget, and if there's money available, we think that there's a good opportunity to provide a couple of exercise stations along some of that path that you saw on the plan. So these were all great comments, and I think they'll absolutely enhance the quality and experience in the park, and we appreciate everybody contributing that through the website. So now we'll open it up to any questions that you all may have. I think there are enough people on the presentation that if you want to just unmute yourself and ask the question, I think we'll be fine.
Hi, this is Stephanie Stengline. Question about, you mentioned public art, and to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe we have public art in Camp Green. I know there's other buckets of money for public art. I know there's a dedicated funding source and there's other opportunities. Is that something we can, I'm really interested in integrating into that park, and is there other funding for that, and how can we tap into that funding?
So I'm going to let Bert kind of expand on that a little bit, but I do know at this stage, we haven't incorporated any public art into this specific project, but Bert, if you want to piggyback on that.
Certainly, yeah. So 1% of all of our capital budgets goes to public art. And for some of our projects or smaller projects like this, 1% is not enough to create kind of a larger piece of art there. And so what we tend to do is we pool that 1% and do larger, kind of more expansive pieces in a certain number of projects. This was not one of the projects that we had identified in the current funding that we've got, and all of the funding that we have is currently allocated to projects. But I would say in the future, we absolutely have the opportunity to identify, we've got the space to do it here, and I think we've got kind of a rich history about the use of the neighborhood, and I think we've got an opportunity to go in and do that. I will say that we're getting more and more requests for art within our parks, not just our new parks, but a lot of our existing parks. And so we're going to be looking at ways that we can expand opportunities for art in parks that aren't part of that 1% fund that's overseen by the Arts and Science Council.
Hi, Katie. This is Cynthia. I just wanted to put the idea out about the name change, but I know that'll be a kind of an issue. But is there a way to actually have a plaque for individuals that have was an intricate part of this process?
So I'm also going to have to defer to Bert on this one. I do believe we have like a memorial tree or memorial bench program, if I'm mistaken, that that allows you to place things within the park that can memorialize different folks for different reasons. And I think there is a process that you have to go through. And I can't remember if it's with operations or horticulture, but
Yeah, Cynthia, I hope you're doing well. I think one of the ideas was at the entrance points that we have the opportunity to do not just park kind of ID signage, but also some additional signage that would talk to the history of the park, the history of the neighborhood. And that would be a great location to have a plaque similar to what you're talking about here in terms of the history of the space. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think Lawana has her hand raised if you would like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. So I put the question in the comments as well, wondering if you all have had any discussions or are considering applying for the Kaboom grant, which has been helpful to have a number of parks built in the surrounding area. And part two to my question is, if we're able to have adult exercise equipment, much like what's at Lady Ray Thomas Center, I believe a grant also helped to fund the development of the outside workout equipment there. So I was just wondering if there's been any conversations about those particular grants.
To date, we haven't. You know, we feel right now pretty good about where our budget sits, but we certainly want to make sure, you know, before we overcommit to anything that that we're going to have enough money to do everything that I think we want to and that we hope we can. So, you know, should we get to that point where we figure out exactly where all the numbers fall, I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility for us to look into something like that should we want to continue to pursue additional amenities at the site.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into the timing of that grant. I know some cycles don't necessarily align with project schedules. And so we'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tracy Crenshaw, and I'm just kind of curious. I assume the park would close at dark anyways, but I was wondering about street lighting around it. Are there any plans for that?
So right now, we're not planning to add anything outside of what's existing. And I know there's a street light on the Remount Road side, kind of at the property line with the fire. I believe there's one along Greenland, and my memory is kind of fuzzy on what's going on Monument. So we wouldn't want to add any. And you know, there are a couple of reasons for that, but the main one being our parks are open from dawn until dusk, and any additional lighting might actually encourage folks to come out beyond that time frame. And you know, we really want to discourage use of the park after dark if we can.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Looks like we had a comment in the chat that loves the idea of the outdoor exercise equipment. And so that was something that we heard quite a bit as well. I think Drew made that.
Yeah, I like that idea. I do have a question that I think I can look at the picture and answer myself, but was just curious if any of this room around the fire station, is there going to be designated parking area? I'm guessing there's no room for that, but just curious if we expect Greenland to fill up, which will allow for a park, of course.
So with these types of parks, we generally don't provide parking. You know, these are intended to be the parks used, you know, by the neighborhood, which we recognize that some folks will drive to it. And we haven't really seen any issues with, you know, the streets getting kind of overcrowded. Of course, if the community were to hold an event at the event lawn, you're probably going to see a little more parking in that area during those times. But day-to-day use, it should be pretty low volume.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
I think we had a question from a future user there, but I couldn't quite make that out.
It is for them, so we should try to make sure that
Absolutely.
we pay attention.
I think it was a thumbs up for the playground.
Yeah, see there?
Well, if we don't have any more questions, feel free to send me an email directly. My contact information is going to be on a slide in a minute. If you think of anything, or if anything comes up over the course of the construction process, and you're just curious about anything, we'll be happy about where we can and answer questions. If you'll go to
Hey,
the next
Katie,
slide.
what's the timeline on this again?
Oh, I'm
Because just
sorry.
for FYI, I know with the Kaboom part of it is the fact that it's a low-income area, and our area has changed considerably over the last year and a half, 2 years, as far as socioeconomic, but it hasn't completely changed. But it's usually around June that they start taking applications.
So right now we're hoping to be in construction in the spring. But for something like exercise equipment, and Bert, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's something that we could do later if we had to. I don't think that's something that necessarily has to be done at the same time as some of this other construction if our budget ends up not being what we hope it will be. So we'll certainly look into that when we're thinking about our budget and see if that's something that we need to kind of aim for.
Yeah, Katie, hey, how are you? Horace Allen here speaking. Just two quick questions, actually. You mentioned discouraging after. What kind of measurements will be put in place to do that?
Horace, you broke up a little bit when you were speaking.
Yeah.
Can you please repeat that?
Just how we're going to go about discouraging use after hours.
So, generally speaking, like I said, our parks, well, all of our parks are supposed, the greenways tend to get used at night sometimes, but the parks themselves are closed at dusk. So a lot of it will have to be complaint driven. So if you see something going on that you feel is, it shouldn't be occurring, then you can call Park and Rec directly, or if it's something that you feel like it needs to be attended to immediately, you can always call CMPD and get those folks out there. Generally we don't seem to have too many issues, but I totally understand that, things can kind of crop up from time to time. If Bert, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that, this park has a lot of eyes on it in terms of kind of how it sits on the road. It's fronted on 3 of the 4 sides. And we're keeping a lot of the larger trees there that are up, and then any shrubs or plantings that we do kind of as understory will be fairly low. So visually, you'll be able to see pretty much throughout the park when you're there in the park, or if you're passing by at night. It'll be easy to spot some activity. And typically when we have a situation like that, that's not the place that we see a lot of activity at night after hours.
And
Bert, oh, sorry. Horace, did you have another question? It's Victoria.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the other piece was just park maintenance. What's that schedule look like? And I'm saying this thinking about the park right over here. Area that park off of Moorhead. Just wondering what the maintenance schedule will look like. Did I break up again?
You did.
Okay.
I think you're frozen, Horace.
The maintenance schedule?
For the park?
Yeah, park maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Bert, do you mind answering that one?
Yeah, so I think Greg Clemmer, who is the director for park operations, is on the line. So if he is, I'll let him chime in. But typically, I think 2 to 3 times a week is our typical visitation rate. And then a lot of that is based on kind of the state of the trash cans. You know, if they get filled up very quickly, then we're going to increase the rate of going out there to make sure that everything is taken care of. We don't want, you know, garbage cans overflowing or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking about the park right off of Moorhead, Bryant Park.
Sure.
You know, like over there where they have the almost like the stairway, the concrete steps levels, like that one. I don't know any type of maintenance that takes place there. I know that trash can is always full.
Yeah, that's a park that gets use from time to time, and when it gets use, it's all at one time. I think the ball field there is used quite a bit for kind of pickup baseball and kickball. We have actually done some work over there recently, and so I believe our visitation to that park will step up. But I'll make sure to reach out to Brian Joyner, who is oversees all of our parks in the central region, and make sure that we're doing that on a regular basis.
Got it. Thanks.
I would like to ask a quick follow-up question related to security. Is there a possibility, while you're still at the beginning stages of the design, to partner and have some LED lighting? Basically motion lights, because that will also help, because what we've noticed in some of the older communities, once they added the motion lights, that helped to deter a lot of the after dark activity that potentially could happen at a park.
Great minds think alike.
Exactly. We've been down this rodeo before.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea, Luana. I think it's something that we'll absolutely look into. That way, if someone is there, you can see that they're there. You know, typically, from a park and rec standpoint, we feel like if we're lighting it, then we're inviting use kind of after hours, right? From a CMPD standpoint, they like lights within the parks because they can see at all times during the day and during the night. So that's an interesting twist, and I'm not sure. I'll reach out to Greg and Brian and see if that's something that we've used in the past, and if we have, kind of if it's been a success. If not, this might be a great place to go in and try it out.
Right, like when you look at best practices, even though the county and park are different from the city as far as the conferences you attend, I noticed, remember through National League of Cities, some other communities utilize it, because the challenge is it's just having a light up. People get comfortable with that light, opposed to having motion lights. That is a different trigger, and you don't really know, that deters a little more of that activity, opposed to just having the light on all the time. And then you all receiving calls from residents about, oh, why is that light so bright?
I think that's a great point. Yeah, anytime the light comes on and you're out in the dark, you freeze, right?
Do we have more in the presentation, or was that it?
We do. I was just making sure
Yay.
everybody had their hand raised. Thank you. So before we kind of wrap up here, we wanted to remind everybody that we're currently in the midst of our Park and Recreation Master Plan. So if you can go to mecplaybook.com, you can find out more information about kind of where we are in that process and kind of what's left to be done with that plan. This is a plan that's going to inform how we pursue land and develop parks over the next 10 or so years. So it's really important that we get as much community feedback on that as we can. And then lastly, last slide, there's my contact information that I promised you earlier. Please feel free to reach out at any point. And for those of you who may not have caught the entire presentation, we'll be posting the YouTube video of this, hopefully before the end of the week, on that publicinput.com/Dowd Park webpage. So feel free to visit that. And if you have questions, once you've kind of gone through that whole presentation, you can reach out to me and we can certainly have a conversation. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight or sitting in and, and participating. All of your feedback was wonderful, and we certainly appreciate it and look forward to being part of the Camp Green neighborhood.
Thank you for hosting this for us.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Good evening.
You too. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Thanks, everybody.